Welcome to Policy Watch. I'm Joe Briggs. My guest today is Pakistani specialist and commentator Imran Khan, who was formerly in the Pakistan Air Force. He's a commentator and analyst and one of my frequent guests on this show, I think probably over at least 7 times by now. Imran, welcome to the show again. I really appreciate your patience and your graciousness.
It's my pleasure, Joe.
Thanks again. So, Imran, you've been on the show, I think now like 7 times over the past couple of years. It's been a real pleasure. You're one of the few people who really know the insides about what is going on in this very important region, Afghanistan and Pakistan, and in the middle there in Waziristan. But I want you to take me back here for just a minute, because I got to tell you, it's been so long. This conflict has been going for so long. I need you to explain something to me from the very beginning. Why the hell are we in Afghanistan today? When we were attacked on 9/11, we know that Osama bin Laden and his crew, Al Qaeda, originated out of Afghanistan. But how many people was Al Qaeda back in 2001?
I don't know for sure, but if you look at how this whole thing was organized, the attack of 9/11. Most of the main players were actually not based in Afghanistan. They came out of Europe, Germany to be particular.
Yeah.
The key players. And their origin was primarily Saudi Arabian. So they most probably had links with Al-Qaeda. But they were not Afghans. There was zero Afghan in 9/11. And there was zero Pakistani or zero Taliban in 9/11. So the main mistake that Taliban made was that when Pervez Musharraf in Pakistan and many others also asked the Taliban leader at that time of Afghanistan, Mullah Omar, to hand over Osama bin Laden, he was actually willing to hand him over to a third party or Saudi Arabia, or where he thought he could face justice. Mullah Omar did not think that with the feeling of high emotions running in America, he would be able to face justice in America.
Uh-huh.
And I think George Bush just hurried the hand, much to the chagrin of the leadership in Pakistan, who knew that they would be faced with the burden of more refugees, more turmoil, which, as it turns out, they were right.
Okay, so I can corroborate what you're saying there by looking back to an October 3rd, 2001 New York Times article titled "A Nation Challenged the Afghans. Taliban say they want to negotiate with the U.S. over bin Laden." So I guess we weren't willing to do it, but we invaded, and we spent a lot of time there, and we were told by Cheney and several other people that Al Qaeda was all but dispersed. But my question really is, at this point today, who are we fighting over there today? What is our objective today? What is the threat that we face by whom in Afghanistan today?
Actually, we are no longer fighting Al-Qaeda, in my opinion, in Afghanistan. We are not even fighting Taliban. We are not even fighting Pashtuns. We are primarily fighting everyone who lives outside Kabul. All the Afghans are now treating American as an occupier and an occupational force. And not only Americans, but NATO.
Uh-huh.
And if anyone has read Afghan history, it's not too long ago that Britishers had invaded Afghanistan. And if you read today's Boston Globe's editorial, that person makes a reference to this fact, that they have a very recent, only 100-year-old history of fighting the Britishers and kicking them out and basically killing about 15,000 British soldiers in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
So now that all that thing is coming back within Afghanistan and saying, here they are once again, now at the backs of Americans, so they are viewing Britishers and Americans in the same way. And so we are now an occupational force. Our puppet, Karzai, is thoroughly disgraced. He has one of the most corrupt regimes, and I had mentioned to you in my earlier comments also that the main mistake, we made actually two mistakes. It would have been far inexpensive, both in money and human lives, to have gone along with what Pakistan and Pervez Musharraf was saying, which is give Taliban some time. You know, Taliban, we sort of disgraced them afterwards after this decision that they didn't allow Osama to be handed over to us immediately. But just prior to September 11th, we actually were doing business with them. We were negotiating oil pipelines through Afghanistan with Taliban. Taliban ministers were being entertained in Washington. So this whole stigmatization of Taliban is equal to Al-Qaeda is something that happened post 9/11 based on certain errors on both sides, on the Taliban side and on American side.
Okay, so up until 9/11, we had a cozy working relationship with Taliban in the same way that Pakistan did, with Musharraf and Pakistan did, and then after 9/11. As I recall, there's a process of demonization, of treating them as no different from Osama bin Laden, and kind of building up the sentiment in the States and throughout the rest of the world that they too were the enemy.
Right. So the Bush doctrine was, you know, if you have any sympathy with it was a very black and white doctrine. If you're not with us, you're against us. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So by that token, since Taliban were not with us, they became against us.
Okay. And again, I asked you this question earlier. Let me ask it again, just to put some bounds on it. The size of Al-Qaeda in 2001, before at the time of the 9/11 attacks, how many zeros do you think are in that number? Is that something measured in hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000? We decided to go to war against whoever it was, but it, I never really understand how big it was. How big it was.
In numbers, I think Al-Qaeda was in thousands. But Al-Qaeda was providing, since we had put economic sanctions against Taliban, they were hard-pressed for money. So I think Al-Qaeda was providing them with monetary support, which to me was more important than numerical support by Al-Qaeda. But Al-Qaeda, even with monetary support, Taliban just were looking for money. We could have given them money. Like we eventually gave 1,000 times more to the warlords afterwards, like CIA went and dole huge amount of money. Why didn't we do it earlier and cut Al-Qaeda off from Taliban?
That is, if our intention was to capture Osama bin Laden and those responsible for the attacks on 9/11.
Exactly. So if you recall, you had Eric Margolis earlier on your show, mm-hmm. And one of the questions I had asked him through you was, I am totally confused as to what is it that we are getting out of our presence in Afghanistan. And if you recall, Eric said oil. So even if you give him the benefit of doubt ahead, oil is not going to, we are going to drill oil locally, and oil eventually is not going to be that important for us to be losing sleep over a piece of land that is, very, very remote in many ways. The other argument that I've heard is the American idea of having lily pads all over the world. Now that's a very grand notion and notion worthy of, superpower, but that notion has to be gauged with our ability to sustain that kind of a model. And I think with all the economic crisis going on right now and lack of friends in that region, and especially with our predator attacks every day into Pakistan, we have completely made Pakistanis very angry with us, as one can understand. Mm-hmm. So we have actually lost many of our abilities to sustain that policy of having lily pads around the world. You need a friendly environment to do that, and we just don't have it now, and actually we have gone backwards.
So Eric Margolis, and we're talking about the Sun-Times international reporter Eric Margolis, he he stated what the U.S. was interested in was this trans-Afghanistan oil pipeline that ultimately brought Caspian Sea oil through, connected it with Pakistan, and then from Pakistan it could be routed down to the sea, or ultimately brought out through the west, and that the interest in that pipeline was ultimately what kept us there today. Would you agree with that, or do you think there's more or less to that?
Well, Eric knows what he's talking about, so I give him the benefit of doubt. But to me, I don't think we have executed, if that's our intention of keeping that area sort of permissive to access to oil, then the last thing you want to do is to turn the population of Afghanistan against you, and now the population of Pakistan against you. So, it's going completely, this policy of, might only is not getting us anywhere, and especially might only at the expense of a ruler that represents the minority in Afghanistan and not the majority. So it's just unsustainable, this policy. And in my opinion, based on what I'm hearing, I think we have already lost. Now, it's the only person who is telling marginally what's true are the British generals out there. Mm-hmm. They are saying it's time to negotiate with the Taliban and the Pashtuns.
Well, now, that is very interesting because... And I'm glad you brought that up because, again, referring back to this October 3rd, 2001 article in the New York Times, there's a paragraph here that quotes, it says, President Bush has vowed repeatedly not to negotiate with the Taliban for the surrender of Mr. bin Laden. And so, here just the other day, you mentioned about the British generals. Well, I do believe just the other day, reading an article that General Petraeus is now of the same opinion, that we should indeed be negotiating directly with the Taliban.
Right. So if you look at it, I think time has come when chickens are coming home to roost, and time to make stupid decisions is running out. So all the smart people need to be listened to, and General Petraeus is certainly, in my opinion, one of them.
Uh-huh. Well, again, I'm still not clear that as of today, what do we want out of the conflict, out of the situation with Afghanistan? Because it was in behalf of Afghanistan that we made the maneuvers and basically corrupted the entire political process and spent a ton of money in Pakistan and basically risk alienating a very important nuclear, a country with nuclear weapons on behalf of obtaining some objective with Afghanistan. And as of today, honest to God, I scratch my head. I just don't know exactly, what it is to win and what why are we there? What is our what would we, under what conditions would we agree that we would have won or satisfied our interest?
So there's, and general news we are talking about, the need to stabilize Afghanistan. If you listen to read the article about Pakistan Work Study Group that Steve Cohen sent me, they're talking about stabilizing Afghanistan so that when we leave, there is enough security apparatus there such that groups like Al-Qaeda don't gain currency there. That is one of the things being talked about. But if you really look underneath it and listen to all the people who are the players in the surrounding region, the game is actually much more dark, and I've sent you some articles about it. Mm-hmm. What's happened is that India and Israel don't want a nuclear Pakistan. So what they have done is they have created, and they saw that Americans are out there, and with the Israeli lobbies in America, and the joining together of Israel and India, they provide the space for India to create terrorist activities in Balochistan and in Waziristan, which recently when Prime Minister of Pakistan visited White House, he put it in front of Bush and said, this is what's happening under your noses. So either you're party to it or you're allowing it to happen, neither of which is acceptable. And so there is this dark game going underneath it where we don't see the equivalent of Indian CIA, which is RAW, are the acronyms. And they are being blamed for a lot of trouble that's happening in Pakistan. So from the Pakistani perspective, they see as a squeeze happening by India and Israel on Pakistan to destabilize it and treat it as a failed state. And since we are involved there for the 9/11 reasons, it's just we have afforded India the space to play that game under our cover. And that's one of the reasons what Pakistanis have proof, they say, of even this Marriott bombing being associated with RAW, which is the Indian CIA. So there's a lot going on there which doesn't make it in polite company.
Right. Well, let's talk for a moment about something more clear and more tangible, and that is this increasing rate of U.S. Induced casualties in Afghanistan, Waziristan, and Pakistan. It seems like almost every week we hear a U.S. jet, dropping a bomb or one of these drones shooting a missile or shooting guns into a wedding party, killing innocent peoples. And I have this timeline that goes from August 13th to September 21st, a graphic from one of the articles that you sent. And the graphic was entitled "A Strained Alliance." U.S.-Pakistani relations have been strained over their different focuses on the war of terror, and Pakistan especially resents U.S. strikes on its soil. I'm just going to give you a few of these dates. August 13th, missile strike killed 9 people. August 20th, 7 days later, missile destroyed a militant hideout, killing at least 5 people. August 30th, missile strike killing 4 foreigners. September 3rd, ground attack by U.S.-led forces killed 15 people. September 4th, reported missile strike kills 4 people in North Waziristan. September 5th, reported missile strike in North Waziristan kills 5 alleged foreign militants. September 8th, reported missile strikes on a seminary killed 9 people, including militants and civilians. September 12th, reported missile strike killed 12 people. September 17th, reported missile strike killed at least 6 people. September 21st, Pakistan troops fired on 2 U.S. helicopters that crossed the border. And, that's only up till September 21st. It's almost a month later. It's been repeated with about that same frequency, maybe an increased frequency. It seems to me that this is really going in the wrong direction.
Right, so this is why I think we have completely alienated the people out there, because when you strike them from the air, as I said, you really don't know what you're hitting. You may think you're hitting someone, but chances are you're hitting innocents as well. And how do you decide from the air? I mean, we spend months in jury trying to figure out innocence or guilt of a person. How can you decide from the air? Okay, this house is worthy to be annihilated. So although I would say it differently. You mentioned 2 things. In Afghanistan, the number of civilians dead, and in Pakistan. I think the number of civilians dead in Afghanistan are actually even a lot more. And the U.S. General McCartney even said some time back that one of the fundamental flaws is that since we have such few boots on the ground, we resort to airstrike immediately. And that has huge, in military terms, collateral damage, meaning kids and civilians are dying in big numbers. When you drop a 500-pounder on a bunch of houses, it does serious damage. And so this is the reason why I'm saying that the Afghans are now considering Americans as an occupational force. They cannot, even the most well-wishers cannot see how we can be otherwise, because the first thing that happens is a bomb comes from the air and destroys people there. So we have essentially lost Afghanistan. And now the question is, how do we get out in a manner such that it's not even more damaging? And both Obama and McCain's point that we should send more troops is digging the hole a little slower, but we are still digging the hole because there's no social space left to engage the society anymore.
Right. Well, that's kind of why I was driving the point of why are we still there? Because according to Eric Margulies, we should just get out. There's nothing. There's no objective there to be gained. And if both Obama and McCain have basically the identical perspective or policy toward Pakistan and Afghanistan, as you say, they're just digging. They're digging the hole deeper. Is there anything left to salvage? Would we be better off by just completely pulling out and let time attempt to heal the wounds?
Completely pulling out, unlike Iraq, would not be a bad idea, because in Iraq there is still an established infrastructure that we have, and there is enough interest by players surrounding that things can't really go that bad in a hurry. Afghanistan is already a mess. All we are doing is killing more people, rearranging stones with expensive bombs. I don't see. Every day of our presence in Afghanistan actually makes us more insecure.
Yeah. I would tend to agree with you. And there's something else that we haven't brought out, but we're obviously right now today in the midst of a huge financial crisis. The United States and other European countries are in the process of bailing out major financial institutions, nationalizing banks, and taking over, assuming failed mortgages. And at some point, I would think that we've got to begin to figure out how we're going to pay for these things. And therefore, how can we pay such huge, monstrous debts while we're still carrying such a huge debt load by our operations in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq? So to be perfectly honest, I just don't know how we can afford to do this. But I'm also reminded that wasn't it Osama bin Laden's stated objective, or at least strategy, that he would not defeat us militarily, but any defeat would be an economic defeat. He would destroy the country through an economic ruin.
Right, and we also weren't smart enough in the way we responded to that threat, and we did a lot of stupid things. And we currently are actually, if we follow both Obama and McCain's strategy, we are going to do that even more. But to McCain's credit, when the same question was asked by one of the panel, the person organizing the speech,
Yep.
that what are you going to cut? McCain was the only guy who said that I'm going to cut defense. Obama is so insecure when it comes to military that he didn't have the guts to say that.
Huh. Well, I think a lot of people cross their fingers and hope that once the election is over and that he is in office, that he will find his once principled positions again. That's a coin toss, I guess, at this point. But I think I believe that's what many people refer to as, hope you can believe in, change you can believe in. Well, Imran, once again, we're about out of time here. I want to thank you again so much for being my guest so frequently over the last. Over the last couple of years on this issue. You're a real expert, a real breath of fresh air, and certainly have a viewpoint that is an information that is different than most of us are understand or being told by the local news or the newspaper. So I thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you, too.
Thank you again. Bye-bye. Once again, a very interesting report by my very good friend and analyst Imran Khan, coming to you from the Boston area. He's a rich history in Pakistan. He was a pilot in the Pakistan Air Force. Marvelous guy, quite a gentleman. It was nice to have him on again. This has been Policy Watch. I'm Joe Briggs. Join us again. Thank you.